All right, let's get started. Today we'll be creating some assets in 3ds Max. Well, actually one asset to show the workflow. We'll be taking a placeholder that I'm using for the dynamic POI and taking it through the workflow from 3ds to Substance. Well, 3ds technically to Asset Watcher to Substance, back to Asset Watcher, then to Nifskope, and then to the CK in the end so they can be used in game. And we will get started. So I'm basically making some folders first off for where we're going to put the stuff. We're going to make a 16 meter by 16 meter. I'm calling it a base, but it's really just a floor. That will be used as the maximum range for some stuff. Basically creating in our asset library, we're creating a folder for it, for where Asset Watcher will get the resources to convert them, and this is the folder it's going to dump them into. It will automatically convert them for PC and Xbox. And in here, I need a textures folder. For some reason, the Asset Watcher is very strict about the textures being in a folder named textures in the source folder. So in Asset Watcher, we will now create a new job. Meshes and textures are what we want to process. I've tried to get it to do materials, but it doesn't do them. So I just do them myself. Target the ones in Starfield. PC version first, then the Xbox version. So technically speaking, the Xbox can support internal meshes like Starfield uses. Let me rephrase that. Well, the Xbox doesn't support them. All of the development tooling for Starfield requires them. So we can't use the Underbar Team City one like Bethesda recommends until you're ready to do a release, because tools like Nifskope will fail, although Nifskope's newest version does try and auto-convert them back. And even the CK has trouble with them. So the best thing is just to wait until the release and then use Nifskope to convert them to external geometries, or make a bogus change, like copy the NIF, fix this, copy the NIF out, copy it back in, and then it will do the geometries, external geometries. It'll save that, and for some reason, Asset Watcher does not save its changes unless you click this button, even when it shuts down. So that's Asset Watcher setup. So once we do make this NIF, or once we do make the FBX, it will auto convert into a NIF, and then same thing with the textures. Once we make them in Substance, it will auto create there. So what we're going to do first is create a box. I don't care what I set it to, because I'm an old school programmer, so I like to use numbers versus tooling. So I'll just set it to what I want myself. All right, we're doing 16. And I always just set up 1 unit high. For 3DS and Starfield, the units are in centimeters. So I want a 16 meter by 16 meter panel. So that's why I did 1600. And then 1 unit high just to get it off the ground. And then I go into the front one and I will drop it so it just barely is above the surface. You can use the W key to get the movement object tool to pop up. And then you can use the E key to do the rotational. I really just want it barely above the surface. And I do want it centered on 0, 0, so just going through the front and left view to make sure it's centered correctly. There we go. Next, I'm going to make a little center marker, which is just a 1 by 1 sphere, or 1 unit, 1 centimeter radius sphere. I'll get the words correctly eventually. And we convert this to an editable mesh. Oops, make sure it's centered correctly. Then I'm lazy, I just use the polygon tool. And we chop out the bottom half of the sphere. The next one I'm going to import because it's a minor pain to create the offset arrow that I use for the front marker. Now, the last thing we do is in the material editor, we need to create a bunch of these VS bin layered materials, which is Bethesda's material system, and then link them up. Now with if you follow the Bethesda RTools install instructions, you'll have this new export tool. So now we're going to create a config and container for it, which is really the 9 node in the background. Go choose those folders created earlier. And in this case, it's just a marker, so it's just static. If you're doing other things like NPCs and stuff or armor, weapons, you'll have to use some of these other options. But in this case, we're just doing a static. I always forget to do that. You gotta remember to drag the parts underneath the node so that they get proper linked up in the NIF, and then re-export it. It's actually pretty good about giving us errors. Save that just to be safe. And if we go check Asset Watcher, we'll see that it converted the FBX over to the NIF. And if we go look in the PC folder, there is now a NIF. So we're done with the 3DS part. Now we're going to make a new project. Just because I'm lazy, I use the PBR metallic roughness template. And then later I'll convert it over to the correct settings for Starfield. And we want set it to 2048 resolution space. Hit OK. It'll import it. Now for each of those BSLin objects we created, we'll have to go set up some stuff for their texture settings. Basically, we need to add ambient occlusion, emissive, and opacity because the CK can use them, and substance is will generate them if the material uses them correctly. And then these settings match Bethesda settings. Base color needs to be RGB8, emissive RGB8, normal is RGB16F, and then the rest of them are just L16, linear 16. So we get all that created on all of these. I wish there was a way to set that as the default, but I haven't found it yet. Now that we set all that up, we can bake the meshes so that we can properly set the textures. Turn them all on. Make sure their output size is 2048. I don't know why some of these don't reset correctly. And then do the bake. Takes a couple of minutes to go through, depending on the complexity of the meshes. Go back to painting. On the base, so that will be clay terracotta. Center. Never actually gets viewable in game because this is just markers that I'm setting up. But it kind of looks cool, so I usually use the advanced ones and it's easy to set them up. Now I need metal rust. That one I change it because I like it more of a burgundy color. We go to the brush settings, come down here and change the color. Now if we go look, everything should be there. There's our front marker. Where'd the center marker go? Definitely there because that's the texture for it. There it is. I guess on this one I might have to make that one larger. It's just to mark the center on the plate. But like I said, this is never actually visible. And we will go export textures. Well, actually, let's save it first. Export textures. Need to fix the path. Let's go in the textures folder. Need to switch that over to Starfield based on output template. If you look at the exports, you'll see that it's exporting all of the various textures we need in the correct sizes. I use TIFF because for some reason Asset Watcher, they didn't update it to handle PNG like the industry uses. So it still only does Targa and TIFF. I use TIFF because Targa, I can't get it to go to 16 bits. So I don't know if that's a fallacy of substance or if it's a fallacy of the format. But in any case, TIFF works just fine. And we're done with that. Go look at Asset Watcher. You'll have processed all of them. And if we go look at the folders, they will be there. Now, normally I would, well, I am taking the NIF over. But because these placeholders are all near identical, I'm sharing the texture to save some space. Sharing the textures and the materials. So this next part wouldn't be any different other than you would go into the forgot to start that up. We go into CK and use the material editor to create them. And sorry, this is going to take like 5 minutes for it to start up. Okay, and the CK is finally up. So what we would normally do is go to material editor, then go find our material. And we just set each one of these up. And these are the materials that were exported and transferred over. But like I said, because they're the same and to save disk space, we're just going to reuse the one that I already made for the very first one. Okay, now that it's finally exited, open up Nifskope. And we will go open the NIF that we made. So we need, for each one of those sections that I made, we need the name of the section. Yeah, that didn't go where it was supposed to. We'll need a separate tag for material ID, otherwise you get a duplicate error. And then the final one is the path to the material. I use Starfield Material Exporter for this part just because it gives me the path in a handy form, even though I'm going to the wrong spot for it. And it also gives me the hash code that we need for one of the other screens. Sometimes Nifskope builds that hash code, sometimes it doesn't. Not sure what the difference is, why it doesn't. But that's what we have to live with. We just copy these fields over just because I'm old and I tend to forget. Grab a screenshot of these ID positions for the array because we'll have to enter them in the block list. So you can see with this one, everything's all messed up. That's because it didn't create all of the positions it should have automatically. I'm not sure why. The art tools don't properly set them up, but they don't. So it's easy enough to fix it yourself. And then I go sanitize it just because since the last release of Nifskope, I don't think it's Nifskope's problem, though I think it's the last release of Starfield. CK, it doesn't seem to build the NIF correctly. So if you just do reorder link, reorder blocks, and fix invalid block names, although I don't think fix invalid block names actually does anything. And we go check. I don't like working with this big one. Oh, it's backwards, that's right. There's a little front marker. Back here should be the center marker. And there's our center marker. I like to save it and then reload it just once to make sure. And that's done. Now we fire up the CK. And wait for 5-10 minutes again. All right, now the CK is loaded. We will go to the statics. Show the edited forms only. Go find one of the old ones that I already made. See if I edit. name it. Go choose the new NIF. So now we have our new one up there. Okay, and that is how you get an asset from 3ds to texturing it in Substance, then linking the materials up in Nifskope, and then finally adding it to the CK so you can use it in game in any of the cells. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be